The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited initially announced that it was in the final stages of listing on the capital market as required by the Petroleum Industry Act 2021. However, the statement was retracted less than 24 hours after being posted on NNPCL Limited's ex-social media handle. Meanwhile, Nigerian crude oil grades have struggled with weak demand in the April trade cycle as European buyers opt for lower-priced alternatives like US WTI, Caspian CPC blend, and other Mediterranean grades. Two interesting conversations, I must say, and joining us for more on this is Olufemi Oladehin, Senior Partner, Argentil Capital Partners. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
Holidays to you.
Right, so what do you think happened? I mean, why did the state oil giant withdraw the IPO statement?
So look, I believe that, so let's go back to the beginning. We all know that the PIA has requested that, has demanded that NNPC be listed within a period of time. And it would obviously be correct that within the NNPC and the Nigerian government, ongoing discussions would have been happening towards ensuring that that part of the law is fulfilled. As you know, Nigeria has been progressively implementing the recommendations of the PIA. However, what I believe happened was that there was a business roundtable last week wherein the Group Chief Investment Relations Officer of the NNPC may have spoken about the plans towards listing, and maybe somebody overzealously in the comms team decided to create a press release around that. The problem with a pre-IPO release is that it's a regulated process, that before you can actually go out to make a statement that you are looking at doing an IPO, there would have been processes that would have been undertaken internally. One of those processes would have been going to the Nigerian Stock Exchange to pre-file an IM, and probably even identify the platform upon which you're listing. Maybe it's the Nigerian, maybe it's the NGX or any of the other exchanges in the market. So I think that press release was a bit premature, and the NNPC had to do the responsible thing, which was withdraw the premature press release to just ensure that they can take control of the narrative. But the real story is there an IPO in the horizon? I think it's clear that there is an IPO in the horizon, and it's a matter of when rather than if that IPO will be done.
All right, I like that you've talked about the fact that certain steps were jumped, and it's good to see that the NNPC retracted itself, But one would wonder why it had to do that, going by, I want to believe experts are at the helm of affairs and they know how not to jump the market playbook. But away from that, analysts have sort of raised certain questions about, the transfer of shares held by the government, saying this can only be done after an approval by the government or maybe an endorsement by the National Economic Council of the Federation has been obtained. That's one. This were some of the things that people talked about when that particular press release went live. Another is what percentage of the company the government wants to put up for sale. And then there is that other one that sort of centers around assets and liabilities. And if there is an indemnification for new shareholders, who will get a transfer of those liabilities? Are we getting ahead of ourselves with these questions?
No, look, Patricia, I think, yes, people may be getting ahead of themselves. Nigerians should stop getting excited over, fundamental issues that have been resolved over years. An IPO is an IPO. There is a global standard for large companies like NNPC carrying out IPOs. There is nothing like an indemnity to shareholders. You buy a company as is. In fact, who is going to underwrite that indemnity and how does it work? You're basically saying people buy stocks from a stock market and then some external third party is going to indemnify them. That's not even possible. There is no nexus. You buy a company based on the information that is available to you and based on the experience and expertise that you have or the advice that you've gotten from your professionals. However, let's go back to one other question that you asked, which is that, are there undisclosed liabilities or contingent liabilities and all of that. I think whoever wrote, those questions or articles are just being clever by half. The reality is that the IFRS accounting principles by which companies like NNPC and literally every company in the world reports their accounts on an annual basis requires that all contingent liabilities be disclosed in the financial statements. So if anyone has gotten their hands on the 2023 financial statement of NNPC, these disclosures will be there. And as such, there is no need for anyone to warrant against it or to issue a warranty or an indemnity against it. The truth is that we're still looking at NNPC with the purview of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. It no longer is a corporation. It is now a limited liability company that is governed by corporate governance rules that has shareholders. The Ministry of Finance Incorporated and the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated are its two shareholders that hold 50% each. And you still have the ultimate beneficiaries of those shares, which is the Federation account, the Federation, which is the state, local government, and the federal government. So I would say that the level of transparency that we're seeing for NNPC now is actually unprecedented since 1977 when that company was created. And it means that with a listing, there's even a higher level of disclosure, higher level of corporate governance that will be demanded of them. So what I'll be saying here is that, look, IPOs are not fly-by-night events. There is a strong, long process that companies go through before they can be ready for an IPO. So do I see the NNPC even doing an IPO in 2025? I would say that it's extremely unlikely. If you actually see the way the press release was quoted, one of the roles that the NNPC was looking to hire people for was a pre-IPO preparation role. So which tells you that we're probably 12 to 18 months away from an actual IPO to be launched. And there's so many things that affect that launch date, including the market's sentiments at the time, the quality of the results that NNPC is able to demonstrate. Does it have a history of paying dividends to the federal government, who has shareholders, and a few of those other things. So I would say that we need to pause a bit and focus on the fact that they've withdrawn the statement. Obviously, they're going to go back in and clean house. Maybe someone will get a rap on the knuckles for jumping the gun. But I'd say that we just need to pause a bit and realize that we're far points away from an actual IPO.
All right, so that sort of tells me you don't have any concerns regarding what's going on right now. Yes or no?
No, I don't. I think what is even most important for all of us is for NNPC to release their 2024 financial statements. And let's see if they've been able to sustain the level of profitability that they did in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. That will be very, very, epochal for the market. Don't forget that this is a stronger NNPC than a year ago when they were still carrying subsidy liabilities and all the likes. This is a company that has seen significant turnarounds in the last 12 months. And so the 2024 results should be the key thing we're focusing on. And I would love to come and talk about that when those results are released.
Oh, that's quite interesting. I hope you will not be disappointed. I hope the transparency you crave will sort of be evident in that particular report. So away from that, what does this listing mean? Or not just NNPCL, now the listing of NNPCL, maybe other government assets. What do they mean for the Nigerian economy?
Oh, Perpetua, those are big deals. Look, I've spent a bit of time in Saudi Arabia in the last 3 months, and the Saudi Aramco is the largest listed company, and probably the second or the largest company in the world, declared $89 billion of profits last year. That is actually twice the size of Nigeria's budget, and imagine the dividends that the government is getting. So an IPO for NNPC will be great for the Nigerian market. It literally, just given current profitability for last year and historical EBITDA numbers for that sort of industry, you're talking about a $20-30 billion type company. That's what the NNPC looks like. And don't quote me by those figures. These are just rough estimates. A $20 billion jump in Nigeria's current portfolio of listed assets is almost a 60% jump, or almost 100% jump on the NGX index. That will be a significant inflow of FDIs. It would basically catalyze the entire market. And then imagine if some other large Nigerian-owned companies that have been able to corporatize and have the right corporate governance, then join the NNPC on the market, and easily you could have a 200 trillion market capitalization on the NGX, which in itself lends itself to increased foreign investment inflows. Then also, the average Nigerian would have an opportunity to participate in the profitability of one of the largest owned national assets, which today they will tell us it's working for us, but we really don't see those benefits because we are not shareholders or we're not stakeholders in the company. So now if an NNPC does a listing, it means that everybody can buy a share or two. And as that company delivers value, the average Nigerian becomes a beneficiary of it. So when the Saudi Aramco did an IPO, they sold only 5% of the company. And today, those who bought that 5% are the biggest beneficiaries of the efficiency that the company like Saudi Aramco brings to a market. So imagine what happens to a Nigerian who has bought NNPC shares and is able to lock in some of the value that is available there. That will be significant benefits to the market and to the individual shareholders of those companies.
All right, before we move on to the next conversation, in less than 10 seconds, tell us, what percentage do you think the federal government should list?
Look, I think they would do a 100% listing, but the maximum I expect would happen in an IPO, just given the size of the company, would be between 5 and 10% of the holdings of the federal government. I think that if you are going to see programmed increases, it's going to take place over a probably 5 to 10 year period.
All right, thank you so much. Now let's go to the other story. I mean, while the trade cycle has sort of since shifted to May, as many as 15 April loading Nigerian cargoes are still looking for buyers. Are you bothered by this?
No, not at all. Look, perpetually, the trading market always goes through this period, and where we say that there might be a slight oversupply of certain cargoes or certain crude variables. So you have to understand that Nigeria has probably the best quality of crude oil in the world. At worst, 0.05% level of sulfur content. It's sweet crude, it's expensive crude, and it's the refineries that need that crude always get significant efficiencies. So there are times when you're going to go through a period where some cargoes are not delivered, either because there's overproduction in other markets, or people are just looking for lower production across their market space. So, but the truth is that I wouldn't be worried at all that some Nigerian cargoes are still unsold. Those cargoes are going to fly off the radar once markets start to restabilize and recalibrate. Don't forget that we're just coming out of the winter season, both in Europe and the US. So that in itself usually means that it's slight slowdown in supply. But very quickly, in another month or two, we're going into the summer season where a lot of travel and all of that happens. And again, demand usually recovers. So yes, this is usual in the second quarter of the year when we're coming out of, like I said, the cold snaps, and we're going into spring. But once we head towards the summer months, supply immediately dries up and demand picks up for these cargoes, and these cargoes will be able to fly off the shelf. And what I would even suggest is that, I'm sure traders will be looking at potential sweeteners or discounts to buyers at this time around, just to ensure that they're able to ship those cargoes out. But I would say that if you've been in this market for more than 1 year, you would understand that the second quarter is usually a very slow period for crude prices and crude supply.
All right, let's come to some of the challenges facing Nigerian refineries, the local refineries. One would have thought that NNPC doesn't have enough for local refineries, going by some of the forward sales and its commitment to some other companies. But then there are complaints that the persistent unavailability of crude oil has sort of hindered investments in the establishment and even the full capacity operations of 7 new and existing refineries across the country. I would like you to speak to us about this.
So, Perpetua, I've been an investment banker for 35 years. And one of the things that you always say is that before you start a project, one of the things that lenders should actually look out for is guarantee of supply of input materials, and of course a market for you to sell into. So I always find it a bit annoying when people come out and say that they don't have guarantee of supply of products. Why would you build a refinery if you were not sure where your products were going to come from? NNPC owns its own crude. It's allowed to do whatever it likes with its crude. And just even remember that this is a company that is now a limited liability company that should get the best price for all of its products. So if people are indeed building refineries, then they should understand that they have to go to the global markets to compete for supply of crude. And the fact that we think that NNPC would literally produce crude or get its own share of its crude production and would be generous in making it available to local refiners is a bit unfair on the NNPC themselves. I mean, what we are also saying is that there are a lot of fallow fields in the Nigerian oil and gas space, obviously driven by all sorts of things, lack of investments, the whole Niger Delta crisis and the environmental crisis that we've had, and of course community relations issues that have kind of crimped our production. And I think what we should be targeting as a people and as a government is a way of eliminating those challenges and making sure that we can go back to the 2.1, 2.2 million barrels a day levels of production that we used to have, and even seek to increase that to 3 million. I mean, damn what OPEC says, because at the end of the day, we have a country to run, and we have a generation of Nigerians to prepare for the next iteration of the world. So I would say that, look, there is a need to continue to encourage local production of crude oil, to continue to encourage local investments into refineries, but we must do all of this within the ambit of a well-structured commercial structure that allows us to know that cargoes are going to be sold to finance their operations. Cargoes are going to be sold to people who are able to pay top dollar for it. And if anyone wants access to NNPC's cargoes, they just have to be willing to pay for it.
This would make me ask you, what do you think about, the Naira-for-Crude deal? Because you're talking about, people should be ready to pay. What's your thought on that? It's sort of stalled right now. They say, after 6 months, they have to pause, and we are hoping that there will be an agreement soon, but that has not happened yet. What's your outlook? What do you think?
Look, Perpetua, we want it to happen. I think that the average Nigerian benefits if it does happen. But we also, again, must go back to where I started this conversation from, which is that the NNPC is a private organization. Yes, the government is the only shareholder, but imagine if you were a shareholder of the NNPC and you heard on the news that someone was forcing the NNPC to sell products at a particular price or to a particular customer. You wouldn't like it, because you would believe that the company is leaving value on the table. And I would always go back to where we started from. We always try to find shortcut solutions to long-term problems, and it doesn't work. The reality here is that let us build refineries that are able to access products, access global supply from different markets, such that Nigeria would always make a decision at the last minute on whether a particular transaction is beneficial or not. So I would go back to say that, look, as a short-term fix, yes, the crude for Naira conversation is a good conversation. It reduces demand for FX. It does a few things to us as an economy, but it's not a long-term fix for the problem. What really should happen is someone like the Dangote refinery should be bidding for crude oil production facilities, should be bidding for deep offshore production, so that they can put their own money, invest in production, and they can supply products to their own refineries, and without having to rely on a third party who's actually supposed to be a competitor. NNPC has its own refineries, so why should NNPC sell its crude oil to other people when it can supply its own refineries? I think we need to find a balance to these things. I know what government is trying to do is keep prices in a controlled band, but you're not going to do it by sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gains.
All right, it's quite interesting to hear your perspectives, but then there are also concerns about what the Dangote refinery is doing, saying that it's no longer going to sell, petroleum products in Naira. That's on the one hand. Doesn't that bother you? You were talking about the Naira-for-Crude being a short-term solution. So starting with that, I'd like you to then end with what then is the long-term solution. If we can get all of that in 30 seconds.
So look, I mean, I know that Dangote is going to do what is good for himself and for his business. I also know that there is an opportunity here for us to institutionalize our markets. Perpetua, a bag of rice is a bag of rice. Why do we think that we should treat petroleum different from the way we treat every other product? Let us build a commercial country, and where things are done properly. If it means that we pay more in the short term, so be it. We've all adjusted to it and made the right adjustments to our lives and all of that. So I'd say, look, long term, we still have to find a solution that allows the market to operate independently, and I think that's what we're going to end up with.
All right, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts on the show today. Olufemi Oladehin, Senior Partner, Financial Advisory and Investment Banking, Argentil Capital Partners. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your time, and I hope that we'll have another time to talk more about all these.
Yes, I promise you, I wouldn't disappear as much again.
All right, thank you.